So this past week, I get home from work and I do what I normally do. I say hi to the kids, I say hi to my wife, and I go looking for the pile of mail. I don't know why, but this is my routine. And I notice there's a letter from Monroeville, Ohio. Like, I don't know anybody in Monroeville, Ohio. I mean, what's this all about? You open up and it's a speeding ticket from Monroeville, Ohio. It's like, I don't even know if I've been to Monroeville, Ohio. Like, I'm trying to remember, and I look, and, we didn't get pulled over, so it's like, it's not like I'm blacking out in a certain area of my life, but sure enough, there's a picture. Oh, it's a photo camera. How nice, right? Of our van driving through Monroeville, Ohio. And then I was reminded, like, how did this happen? Well, we were on my way to Belleville, my parents' house, for the holidays, and Findlay looked like it was going to be an extra long trip. And so my GPS kindly suggested that I take a different route, which we all said yes, if it was going to get us there faster, which happened to take us through Monroeville, Ohio. Now, we're not notorious speeders either. We might push the limit, but we're not like, crazy, and so it's like, well, what happened? We knew where we were going. We were following our GPS, and we knew we had to follow the speed limit, but apparently while we were in Monroeville, we got focused on something else and lost clarity of the best next speed for us. And so a ticket shows up in the mail. I'm not going to say who it is that was driving at the time, but it's going to be coming out of her budget, that's for sure. Yeah, sometimes that's a small example of what we experience in life. We talked a little bit about this last week, that vision brings focus, that brings clarity on the best next step for me. If you want to live your best life, it's going to require vision, focus, and clarity. And here's what's interesting. We all want clarity. We all want clarity on what's best for us, on the best next step, on the next decision that we need to make. And whether we're able to articulate it or not, we all have vision. We all want to live a better life. We want this year to be better than last year. And the gap that we experience is in where our focus is. And so if you weren't here last week, I'd encourage you to go back and watch it. But last week we talked about how you can focus in a whole lot of different areas. There's all sorts of things in our culture that are telling us where to focus. There are things inside of us, whispers inside of us, things from our past, family and friends that tell us what we need to focus on. But we kind of broke it out in this purpose grid, passion and purpose. And for some of us, we get focused on what we have to do. Some of us get focused on what we want to do. And this is like the competition or the tension that we experience in life. And when that gets too exhausting, we kind of find ourselves drifting back into the drift zone, like we're mindless. But when we can focus on what we were made to do, it brings incredible vision and incredible clarity on the best next step for you and me. And so some of you stepped out of the weekend service inspired, pumped up. I got a text message from someone that's like, I'm changing my alarm so when my alarm goes off, it's like, this is what I was made for, waking up, I'm ready for the day. I ran into another attendee at the drop-off, zone for kids at school. He rolled down his window, he's like, this is what we were made for. And then we laughed at each other, like dropping our kids off at school, And so that's kind of what happened, right? It's like you leave, you're inspired, you're like, yes, this is what I was made for. And then it's like life does a right hook. You showed up at work. Some of you didn't even wait until Monday. It was like Sunday. Reality was at your front door knocking again. It's like something happens in our life. Something or someone gets in the way of what we were made to do. And you probably thought to yourself, man, it'd be so much easier to focus on what I was made for if it wasn't for this person, this job, this thing, this crisis, this issue in my life. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that, first of all, if that's what you experienced, you're normal. I think that tension exists in all of us because you don't drift here. And so if you experience that angst, man, it's probably an indication that there's an area of your life that needs repair. And that's what I want to talk about today. It's like when we can't naturally slide or focus or step into what we were made to do, then there's an area of our life that may need some repair. And so here's the bottom line for our talk today, and hopefully a principle that's valuable for you beyond this. It's this. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. Repairing me makes life better for me. I know there are some of you that are like, okay, Ben, I didn't know you were like a self-help expert. Well, my book is available after the service in the lobby. I'm just kidding. I don't have a book, okay? Repairing me makes life better for me. When we think about the angst that we experience, there's some sort of repair that needs to take place inside of us that will not just make life better, it'll make your marriage better, it'll make your job better. I mean, you could fill in this blank with all sorts of things. It'll make school better, it'll make friendships better, it'll make marriage better. And so when we begin to feel that angst, we need to remember that bottom line. Repairing me makes life better for me. The problem is that our tendency is to think repair in you makes life better for me. Like if I could just get you to change, whoever the you is, if I could get you to change, that would make if I could get you to change this in my community and government and my job, whatever, it's like whatever you want to put in that blank there. If you were just a better husband, then marriage would be a lot better. If you were a better kid, a better parent, a better boss, a better employee, a better neighbor, and so the list goes on and on and on. And sometimes I think we even do this with God. If God were better at his job, then I would be able to live my best life. Our tendency is to focus on why what you are doing is keeping me from what I was made to do. And I think that's one of the reasons why Jesus taught things like this. He taught things like, do not judge others, and you will not be judged. He goes on to say, for you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. So why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, hey, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye when you can't see past the log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First, get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Don't waste what is holy on people who are unholy. Don't throw your pearls to pigs. They'll just trample the pearls and turn and attack you. Some of you are thinking, you had me until the pigs. It's like, I've heard some of that stuff before. Maybe some of you've heard that line. I don't know why. It's like a Sunday school teacher or like a granny voice, don't throw your pearls to pigs. It's like, and so what is Jesus talking about here? I mean, all of these 6 verses are found in what we call the Sermon on the Mount. This is one of Jesus' most popular sermons, and it's most likely that he preached this or talked about this in a variety of settings, not just one talk that they happen to, it's recorded as if it's one talk, but these are some of the common things that Jesus would teach. And so fundamentally, what's he really trying to teach us? He's trying to teach us that instead of focusing on everybody else, you need to just kind of pay attention to the repair that needs to take place in you. And it's easy to begin looking at everybody else. And there are 3 things that you can begin to see in here. He says, don't judge, don't worry, and don't waste. Like these are 3 ways that we lose sight of the repair that needs to take place in us. In some ways, you and I are like this chair. And when we do life, we want to position ourselves. We put things in our life that can kind of keep our life together. Our hope is that we can navigate life understanding what we were made to do. And so we, grow up and things are great. And then as life begins to go along, somewhere along the way, something happens where you're like, some of you didn't even notice the leg was missing. Some of you are like, what's going on there? That chair isn't going to work. Don't sit down, Ben. It's like, somewhere in our life, just like this chair, we realize that something is missing, that something isn't quite right, that life is a little wobbly. And so what do? Well, we try to position ourselves in a way where maybe nobody will notice that there's a little gap in our life, that something needs repair. It's like, if I stay really still and don't let anybody see the real me, then that'll be great. Sometimes it's like if we could just get our attention focused in other places. Don't sit here. Don't sit here. Then that's great. Other times what we pay attention to is we position our life just the way that we need to, so that we're not wobbly. And then somebody comes along and starts bumping the chair, and we're like, who bumped the chair? Why did you do that to me? You see, we start to judge. We start to worry. Sometimes we just come to the conclusion that our life is a waste. Sometimes when we're thinking about where we're at, the way that we get our mind off of what's missing in our life, as we start looking over there, well, at least I'm not like that chair. Do you see their problems? Oh, man, look at them. Woo, yeah, I'm missing a leg, but that fabric is from 1970. Come on, that's pretty terrible. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the way that we live our life. And here's what Jesus is teaching us. He says this, don't allow the faults out there to divert my vision, my focus, and my clarity on the best next step for me. You and I, you need to not let the faults out there, wherever they are, divert your vision, clarity, and focus. But that's what we tend to do. And what's it going to take to fix the chair? A little intentional focus and craftsmanship. And so here's what's interesting. We ignore that a lot of times. Sometimes we try to do it ourselves, and we like if I ask this chair to grow a leg, it'd be like, yeah, good luck, right? So we try to do things by ourselves, and it just gets us stuck in this weird pattern. And so what we do is we judge, we worry, and we waste. Now, here's what's really important. I'm not saying that you need to minimize the problems that you see or the faults out there. I'm not saying that you need to deny them. I'm not saying that you need to pretend that they don't exist or just try to enact some sort of Jedi mind trick. There's like, there are no problems out there. I am fine. That's not what Jesus is saying. But what he's clarifying is these three things don't help. Let's look at them individually. He says, do not judge. Do not judge others, and you will not be judged. Basically, what Jesus is teaching here, that if you don't look at the faults of others, others won't look at your faults. I'm kidding. Okay, that's not what he's saying here at all. But that's the way some people have interpreted this. In fact, this has become a very popular passage for people to use, where it's like, hey, you know what? Don't judge me and I won't judge you. Turn a blind eye to all of the problems around you. No. He's not talking about teaching. He's not talking about correction. He's not talking about helping someone take a next step. He's not talking about evaluation. The judging that he's talking about is this condemning tone. It's this categorizing people into layers of significance. That's an important word. It's like, I am better than you. Are you quick to judge? I mean, when you show up certain environments, are you putting people into a certain order of significance? Because if you are, that's an indication that there might be some repair that needs to take place in you. You're diverting your focus away from what you were made to do. And if Jesus didn't step into our world, automatically judging everyone, condemning everyone, believing the worst at first about everyone, then why should we? Don't judge. Essentially, the way I put this in my notes is focusing on the faults of others does not lead to living my best life. When you and I begin to look around at all of the faults that we see around us, that isn't helping you on this grid of passion and purpose step into what you were made to do. In fact, what it begins to indicate is that our focus has shifted away from what we were made to do. Why? Because when I define passion and purpose, passion is where we find our satisfaction in life. And this isn't this kind of satisfaction that's like, I just ate a piece of chocolate satisfaction. I mean, it's like, that's satisfying. It's great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm talking about this deep soul satisfaction that's combined with your purpose, a sense of significance. That's what this quadrant is really all about. That's what you begin to experience when you step into what you were made to do. But when you and I begin to judge other people, do you know what we're telling the world? We have some low-grade dissatisfaction with our life. And we're just envious of what they are able to get away with. We have some low-grade dissatisfaction, maybe even some insignificance in our life that we're dealing with. And so we're sitting here trying to make ourselves feel more significant, and so we put people into categories. That is an indication that repair in you will make life better for you. And as long as you keep focusing on the faults of others, it's not what you were made to do. Focusing on the faults of others is not what God made you to do. And yet so many times in my life and in yours, we can spend too much time categorizing, judging, and pointing out the faults that we see all around us and missing the opportunity that we have in our own life to step into what we were made to do. Don't judge. Second thing is, he said, don't worry. Look at what he says in the passage. Why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? And here's what's interesting. This verse follows the thoughts about judging, and some people combine the two of those thoughts together. Like when we judge, we tend to judge our enemies. And here he talks about your friend, your brother, someone that you're connected to, somebody that you do life with. And so, yes, they're in the same theme. But what he's unpacking here, this certainly would have caused a little chuckle in the crowd. He's using some hyperbole. He's talking about a log. Another word that you could put in there is like a branch. I mean, if you could imagine me on the stage with a branch coming out of my, eye here, and I'm telling you how to, oh, come here. Let me remove the little sawdust from your eye. Would you trust me? And it's like people are laughing at this point. And what I think Jesus is trying to illustrate is how easy it is to get focused on the little things that you want to help in other people's lives, even though it's obvious to everybody else. You got a big issue. You got a branch. You got a log in your own eye that you need to focus on. And so the next time that you're tempted to focus on some of the little issues all around you, why don't you take this young woman's advice?
Worry about yourself. Worry about yourself.
Can I help?
No.
You want me to help, Rose?
No. Thank you. No, thank you.
What do you want me to do?
Worry about yourself. Worry about yourself. I'll do this one, so I'm gonna do that. You drive! Worry about yourself. Go drive. Go.
I don't care who you are, that's funny, okay? I've heard that every time. It's like, worry about yourself. You just need to put that on auto. I mean, to a certain extent, she's right. And some people think that that's my daughter. No, my daughter's cute, but that's cute, So, yeah, worry about yourself. I think what's fascinating to me is what Jesus is not teaching is to ignore other people's problems. What he's trying to unpack or help us see is that worry grows when I believe I was made to rescue you. Worry inside of me grows when I believe I was made to protect you. Now, as a dad and as a husband and as a leader, yeah, there's a certain layer of protection that I'm responsible for. But if we're not careful, worry in you and me grows when we think we are the savior to a particular situation. And that's not what we were made for. We weren't made to try to protect everyone else and ignore the areas of repair that need to take place in our own life. You will never be able to see what you were made to do if you don't deal with some of the big things in your eye. In fact, Jesus, here's what he says. He calls that a hypocrite. I mean, this is some of the harshest language Jesus uses, and he uses it to the religious leaders, to people in their everyday life. A hypocrite would be, in some ways it's a Greek play acting term where you would put on this mask over top of who you really are to pretend to be someone else. Think about that. It's like that's what he's saying here. Another word that this would be used for in the original language is a false teacher. It's someone who says, I'm an expert, but in reality, I've got this huge log in my own eye. Essentially, for us, it's being inauthentic. It's like us going back to the chair and telling everybody everything's fine. If we're the chair, my life is fine. Just don't sit in the chair, okay? But I'm fine. This chair isn't it beautiful? And it's like, no, you're not being authentic. He says, don't be a hypocrite. First, get rid of the log in your own eye. Repair in me makes life better for me. But it's not all about me. Because look at what he says next. Then you will be able to see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. See, the hope is that, yes, we're able to help each other. But worry in me grows when I feel like I was made to rescue you. So don't worry. Stop worrying about trying to fix everybody else's problems. And sometimes we allow everybody else's problems to make a train wreck of our own life. It makes a train wreck of our finances. It makes a train wreck of our schedule. Sometimes it makes a train wreck of our priorities. So can you identify the log in your own eye? I mean, have you taken any bit of time to go, hey, what are the real issues that I'm struggling with? It's time to be honest. Because why? Because repair in you may actually do more good for everybody around you, all the issues around you, than you realize. So don't judge. Don't worry. And the last thing he says is don't waste. Don't waste what is holy on people who are unholy. Don't throw your pearls to pigs. They'll trample the pearls and turn and attack you. I don't know what your perception of pigs are. I know, and sometimes in the movies and when you go to the stuffed animal store, they're cute and squishy, but they're not cute and squishy, okay? I mean, when they're little, they're kind of cute, kind of. But they got a big nose. And when they get bigger, they become they're tough and they're aggressive. I worked on a pig farm for a summer, and I remember the farmer telling me, don't fall in the pig pen with the big pigs in there and get knocked out. They'll just eat every bit of you. In fact, if you want to dispose of a body, just throw it in there. Nobody will ever know. I'm like, oh man, I need to find a new job. Pigs are vicious. In the Jewish culture, pigs were considered unclean. You weren't worthy to eat of them. If you wanted to insult someone, refer to them in any way, shape, or form around something that had to do with pigs, and that was considered like a playground insult, you know? And so what is Jesus talking about here? Is he saying ignore people that you don't like, ignore people that you think are unclean or unfit for your circle of friends? No. That would be to take these few sentences and take them out of the context of everything else that Jesus taught. Essentially, he's saying, don't waste your life. Don't waste what you were made to do. Don't waste sharing with people who God is if repeatedly they are uninterested in what you have to say. Here's the way that I put it in my notes. You can't want more for someone than they want for themselves. And so there are some of you as parents or as kids of adult parents or like a sibling or maybe even a spouse where you're wanting more for someone than they want for themselves. Now, this isn't permission to ignore and forget and push them away and treat them like garbage. That's not what he's talking about. He's just saying stop aggressively trying to share with them something that they're not really interested to hear. Which means there may be some of you here where you are that person. And there are people around you who care about you, who are trying to offer help, and you keep trampling and maybe even attacking them because they're not doing it exactly the way that you think you deserve. Don't waste your life on that. Do you know there's another principle underneath this that I think is important for us today that he's teaching us here is you can waste what you were made to do by doing all that the world wants you to do. You see, when you begin to focus on the fact that God made you for a purpose, if you don't see that, you can spend your life trying to find things here on earth that only God can provide. I think that's why I find this grid so helpful. When you think about passion and purpose and what you have to do and what we drift to and what we want to, when we focus on what we were made to do, oh man, that brings clarity to our life, which means sometimes we have to repair some areas, some mindsets where we get stuck. Here are 3 mindsets that I think get us stuck. When we get stuck in the have-tos, we have this low-grade dissatisfaction, which means we're prone to judge. When we get stuck in the want-to zone, like way down here, yeah, we're doing stuff that we want to do, but there's this low-grade insignificance, and sometimes that increases our worry. And I'm not saying that worry and judgment only live in those categories, but if we're not careful, what will happen is we're going to drift into isolation because we feel insecure about our life. And so here's what I start to pay attention to. When I start to get judgmental, when I start to get a little obsessive in my worries, when I start to feel insecure, I have diverted my focus away from what God made me to do. And that's an invitation for repair. Why? Because you are made to find significance, satisfaction, and security in God. Not in what you do. I'm not saying what you do isn't important, but not in what you do, not in the people that are around you, not in the way that you help other people. We were made to find all of that in Him. That's what our theme verse teaches us. Look at this theme verse. This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. not an insecure person, not a dissatisfied person, not an insignificant person. We belong to him and we experience this new life. The old life is gone. A new life has begun. So we get to receive God's grace in our life. And when we receive God's grace, you know what it's like? It's like God shows up in our life and is suddenly like, oh, repaired. You're made new. This is what you were made to do. And so we receive that. We don't have to live in doubt and insecurity and insignificance. The problem is life still feels a little wobbly sometimes, doesn't it? It's like, well, then why isn't it automatic? Yes, we have received God's grace. But what Jesus wants to teach us is how to live in that grace every day. Because it's really easy to revert back to the old patterns where we just feel wobbly, the old people that we need to go around to find our significance, our security, and our satisfaction, and those things will never help us feel that way. It's only when we remember what God has done in us that we begin to understand and experience what we were made to do. And that is a journey that will take the rest of our life, day by day. Identifying the areas that we need repair, the insecurity, the dissatisfaction, the insignificance that we're struggling with, and the futile ways that we pursue that. So why is it that we don't experience this in our everyday life? I think the first reason is we just don't see it. We understand that we need God to get to heaven. You know, some people understand that, like we need to receive God's grace in our life, but we don't see that we need to live in that grace every single day. We don't see that Christ is what makes us new. And so that's why sometimes we go back to some of the old stuff that we used to run to that never satisfies. And sometimes honestly, we just don't see that we have a repair issue because we've been so focused on everybody else that we've never learned how to live in God's grace every day. Hopefully this helps you see it. Another reason I think we don't experience it is we don't step towards it. What do I mean by step towards the freedom that God wants us to experience with him? It's taking off the mask and saying, hey, you know what? These are some areas where I am prone to try to move my life to find significance where I forget you. And so I go to work looking for significance. I go into a relationship. I look at what other people say about me. I look at my bank account. I look at all of these earthly things to find significance, satisfaction, and security that ultimately I can only find in you. We don't step towards that kind of authentic relationship with God. And I think another place that we need to do that is in the context of groups with each other. That's why God gave us the gift of a local church to experience this and conversations about this together. I think the last reason we don't experience it is because we don't trust it. I mean, if most of our life we've been used to going all of these other places, if everybody around us is going all of these other earthly places to find their significance, their satisfaction, and their security, we begin to wonder, did Christ really make us new? Am I going to be able to live in what I was made to do? Or would it just be easier to do what I've always done? And I think that's why Jesus says stuff like this. He says, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. We talked about this verse at Thanksgiving, our campus pastors did. There is no amount of physical rest that'll satisfy your need for spiritual rest. And if Jesus is not troubled, or if he's not threatened by what makes you weary and your heavy burdens, then why are you threatened by them? In other words, if Jesus is okay and Jesus lives in me, then my life is secure in him. That's what this helps us. It helps us remind those. It helps remind us of what Jesus has already done for us. That when we are feeling insignificant, we can remember that Jesus left heaven to come to earth for you, for me. He died on the cross for you and for me. That's pretty significant. Who has done something more significant in your life than him? Find your significance in him. And you know what? When we start to feel a little bit insecure about where we're at, like, oh, I don't know how it's all going to turn out, remember that Jesus came back from the dead. And that if he lives in me, There's nothing to feel insecure about because he can overcome every issue, every fear that we face. And if we start to feel a little dissatisfied with life, remember that Jesus is making a place for us in eternity where we can spend eternity with him. That's what it means to rest in him. He goes on to say that we need to take his yoke. He says, take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. And so this isn't like, okay, I'm just going to pray it all away, and if I just pray, all of this will go away. No, Jesus wants to teach us how to live in his grace, which is we have an opportunity to do every day as we focus on what he has already made true in us, and how to find our significance, our satisfaction, and our worth there. He said that for my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. He wants to help you step into what you were made to do. Because when you're here, you stop judging, and you stop worrying, and you stop wasting your life. And instead, you start to experience what God sees as already true for you. And you know what? The powerful thing is that the invitation to experience that is right here within a local church. In the context of remembering who God is in our life, and then sharing that in the groups that we get to be a part of. And we have dozens of stories about people who've experienced group lives. You've already heard about some of them today, but I want to share with you a story of Taylor. Taylor started attending Cedar Creek sporadically a few years ago, and I want you to listen to the journey that God has taken her on, and how groups have provided such a valuable place for her to take off the mask and begin to see who God made her to be. Let's watch.
Growing up, I went to more traditional church. There's not as much youth, and I felt like I wasn't able to connect really with a lot of people, and I knew my house, I'm like 5 minutes from here, and so I see like the big Cedar Creek sign from Perrysburg from the expressway, driving by that every single day. It's like, I should go there sometime. And then one of the days I just walked through the door. I actually went by myself the very first time. Like 4 years ago, I think, is when I first attended. And it was a little bit on and off. But then within the past year, I've been going pretty consistently. A year ago from Christmas, I was not in a very good place. I was not really hanging out with the right crowd. I went into a pretty deep depression. Had a lot of issues with my identity and like who I was. I kind of lost who that was. Then I went to a Christmas service at Cedar Creek, which was super awesome. And then I was like, yeah, I'll come back another week, and like consistently a couple weeks in a row. And then my mood started to pick up a little bit better, and it helped. And then I heard Ben talk about, yeah, we have groups, we have life groups. I was like, what is that? I was really kind of skeptical of it. And then I found Braley and Casey's group. It was like an immediate connection. Conversations were not just surface level. It was like getting a little bit deeper. And at first I was scared. They showed me kind of what real vulnerability is, and that really scared me. But the group showed such a community, such a comfort, that I felt comfortable coming in week by week. And week by week, I was just opening up a little bit more and more. And it was just nice to have a community like that, because I'm used to having friends that aren't Christian and aren't very good influences. And then to have that was just like black and white. And I found myself getting deeper with my relationship with God, and then also with friends. My whole life, I just kind of put up a wall to people. It was just more surface level. And going into group, I was very uncomfortable. Questions about, how my depression was, how things were with my family and myself and my identity. Through that group, they also kind of showed me what transparency was. Not just being vulnerable, but like sharing willingly, like on your own. And also being transparent with God. Like, He knows your heart, but for you to say that and just to have that conversation with Him, that helps you, and then also just strengthens your relationship with God. And I learned that through group also. with the atmosphere and just kind of like the friendship and family that we developed. I felt safe with them. I felt challenged. I felt definitely a growth by the end of the semester with my group, because I looked at myself at the beginning and then myself at the end. It was just like, I didn't know who that person was. So the group that I was a part of started January of last year. Towards the end of the semester, the group just was going to kind of stop, and I just felt a hard nudge. It was more like a push. God was just like, you know what, like, you've taken in a lot. You've absorbed a lot, you've learned a lot, you've grown a lot, and now like you can help other people do that. I'm not like 100% ready, but I think that's an okay thing, because when I start leading this group, I'm going to learn more as I go from the people. I'm not just leading, I'm right there with them in that discussion, being vulnerable too. I can just show them how to be vulnerable and share my story, and that would allow them to grow just like that happened to me. And I want to do that for somebody else. I'm so excited to grow with my relationship with God, with my relationship with friends, and building that good community.
At all of our campuses, will you put your hands together to say thanks to Taylor for sharing her story? So today, repair in you is going to make life better for you. And not you repairing yourself alone. The truth is, God makes available the ultimate repair, where you begin the journey of finding your significance, your satisfaction, your security in Him. And the people that He uses to help us see that and to walk through that are the people that are sitting around the campus with you right now. If you're watching online, then that would be an encouragement that I would ask you to consider, is make physical attendance, not because it's better, and it's an opportunity for you to connect with others, or be in group life, be around other people who are helping you, who are encouraging you to step into what you were made to do. And so our group semester starts in a couple weeks. The first thing that you need to do is identify an area in your life that may need repair. I know there are some of you here today that you're dealing with some pretty significant emotional, relational, or circumstantial issues in your life that are difficult for anyone to overcome. If that's where you're at, I would encourage you to attend Celebrate Recovery. It takes place every Friday night. And if you're watching at Toledo Correctional right now, we have Celebrate Recovery available for you. Just ask around about how you can participate in that program so that you can begin to take steps into the person that God made you to be. Man, we love being a part of a church that meets you wherever you are at and helps you take a next step on that journey with Jesus. There are others of you where maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's just you need a new group of friends. Maybe it's understanding and reading the Bible. Maybe you're still exploring the spiritual journey and you have questions between growth track and different group opportunities. You could fill out that Connect card right in the seat pocket in front of you and say, man, I would love more information about how to get connected here. Perhaps for you, it's finances. We're launching some finance groups at most of our campuses where you can begin to find some financial freedom. The same groups that experienced this last semester experienced over $60,000 worth of debt being paid off and savings of $40,000, not per, but total in these groups across 3 different campuses. And so, man, if you can't get past that repair in your life, you're never really going to be able to step into who God made you to be. And so repair in you will make life better for you, and it'll make it better for the people around you. And all of that really begins as we remember who God says that we are. And so we're going to take a couple minutes before you leave and pick back up the agenda of your day to be reminded of that through song. And so let's make that kind of our closing thought and prayer together. Will you pray with me? God, thank you. Thank you for the promise that you extend, that you make us new. You don't tell us to make ourselves new. When we surrender our life to you, God, we become a part of your forever family, that we are a new person, that we can find our security, our significance, and our satisfaction in you. And so, God, I pray that we would take a step into that reality, that we would live in that grace. And God, for those who have never taken their first step, God, I pray that today, during this song, as they think about the words of this song, they would make this their prayer of surrender to you. Thank you for this life you invite us into. In Jesus' name, amen.